But he's awful.
So that's the London Mayor
deserves right to be
Sadiq
up there.
Khan.
Yeah, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say, the
resist.
London Mayor Sadiq Khan. I mean, where do we start? Where do we start with Mr. Khan? Ben Habib, over to you.
So, the capital in disarray, knife crime up, serious crime up, Metropolitan Police unable to do its job. Sadiq Khan, meanwhile, gets on the airwaves and said at least 40% of the Met Police should be from ethnic minorities. Another sign of the kind of reverse racism that we were discussing earlier on. Sadiq Khan, who spent £200 million pulling together a committee to decide which statues of the great and good of our past should be pulled down, as if they have any right to consider that, any mandate to be considering which statues to pull down. Sadiq Khan, who got on the bandwagon behind Black Lives Matter, gave it a complete clean bill of health, but yet was absolutely draconian when it came to people who were protesting against lockdowns, people who protested recently against the Southport killings and so on. Sadiq Khan, the man who produced a picture of two white parents and their two white children and said, these people do not represent London. Sadiq Khan, who lied and got Imperial College to lie about the air quality in London so that he could impose the ULEZ zone, again, hitting the white van driver and the working class harder than anyone because they need their vehicles in suburban London, outer London, to get to their jobs late at night. And
there's a deeper story here, and it has little to do with the charges against this man. Parliament needs to step up and investigate. Our MPs should be asking Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer the real questions. What did they know, and when did they know it? The same goes for Merseyside Police, whose actions also deserve scrutiny. Keir Starmer chose to politicize a tragic incident that involved the loss of innocent children and injuries from the Southport attack. He weaponized this heartbreak to silence critics raising concerns about the challenges of illegal migration in this country. Not that it's surprising. I thought he'd be number one on the list, but here we are. Ben Habib, what's your take? Ben Habib. Where do I even begin? Under Sadiq Khan's leadership, London is falling apart. Serious crime is on the rise. The Metropolitan Police is underperforming, and he's prioritized diversity quotas over meritocracy, demanding that 40% of the police force come from ethnic minorities. Meanwhile, £200 million was wasted on committees to decide which historical statues to tear down. His support for Black Lives Matter was unwavering, but he cracked down harshly on anti-lockdown protests and other demonstrations he didn't like. Khan has repeatedly undermined British heritage, even claiming that a white family's image didn't represent London. On top of that, he manipulated air quality data to expand the ULEZ zone, which disproportionately affects working-class van drivers. Despite all this, he's focused on pushing divisive initiatives rather than solving real problems. Dan Wootton. It's shocking, and yet he gets rewarded with a knighthood, no less. Ben Habib. A knighthood from the Order of the British Empire, which is ironic since he openly despises Britain's imperial past. If he had any integrity, he'd turn it down, but of course, he won't. Dan Wootton. Couldn't agree more. Now let's move on to the runner-up. Ben Habib. James O'Brien. He's another individual who thrives on division. His rhetoric is toxic and destructive, yet it carries significant influence. He pushes identity politics, envy, and anti-British sentiment while claiming to hold the moral high ground. Anyone who disagrees with him is dismissed outright. Dan Wootton. He even mocks his own listeners. LBC, which used to represent a range of views, has turned into the Labour Broadcasting Company. Since Nigel Farage was removed, O'Brien has transformed the station into an echo chamber for radical viewpoints. Ben Habib. Absolutely. O'Brien worked behind the scenes to oust Farage and used movements like Black Lives Matter to promote his agenda. Dan Wootton. Now for the top spot. Outspoken viewers have chosen their number one Union Jackass for 2024. Ben Habib, Keir Starmer, Dan Wootton. It could only be him. Ben Habib. Starmer misled the public after the Southport tragedy, gaslighting the nation and twisting the narrative around illegal migration. He turned a national heartbreak into a political weapon, delegitimizing the concerns of ordinary people. Dan Wootton. Worse, he manipulated the judicial process, silencing any discussion about what he already knew concerning Axel Ruda Kwana. Ben Habib. Parliament must demand answers. What did Starmer and his allies know, and when? Instead, we're seeing cover-ups and the mistreatment of innocent people. Take Peter Lynch, for instance. Wrongly convicted, abandoned by the justice system, and driven to take his own life in prison. Dan Wootton. Starmer's role in these injustices cannot be overlooked. It's a disgrace. Ben Habib. And let's not forget the mainstream media, complicit through its silence. They've failed in their duty to hold the powerful accountable. Dan Wootton. That's why we're here, to shed light on the truth, thanks to incredible viewers like you. A big thank you to everyone who voted, and to you, Ben, for your sharp insights. Wishing you a fantastic holiday season. Ben Habib. Thank you, Dan. Merry Christmas to you and to all the viewers. Dan Wootton. Merry Christmas, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to Outspoken for more uncensored news, interviews, and discussions. Here's to another great year ahead. There's a deeper story here, and it has little to do with the charges against this man. Parliament needs to step up and investigate. Our MPs should be asking Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer the real questions. What did they know, and when did they know it? The same goes for Merseyside Police, whose actions also deserve scrutiny. Keir Starmer chose to politicize a tragic incident that involved the loss of innocent children and injuries from the Southport attack. He weaponized this heartbreak to silence critics raising concerns about the challenges of illegal migration in this country. Not that it's surprising. I thought he'd be number one on the list, but here we are. Ben Habib, what's your take? Where do I even begin? Under Sadiq Khan's leadership, London is falling apart. As the year 2024 draws to a close, it becomes essential to reflect on the individuals and events that have shaped the political, social, and cultural discourse of the United Kingdom. The term Union Jackasses, coined humorously yet pointedly, seeks to spotlight those who, in the eyes of many, have contributed to controversy, division, or outright mismanagement in the country. This script explores the most debated figures and the narratives that surrounded them, delving deep into the underlying issues that have resonated with citizens throughout the year. The conversation begins with the mention of political cover-ups, a recurring theme in the UK's recent political landscape. It is alleged that certain events and actions, particularly those involving high-profile cases, have been intentionally obscured from public scrutiny. This lack of transparency has left many questioning the integrity of those in power. Parliamentarians are urged to ask critical questions of leaders such as Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer. What did they know about specific incidents? And when did they know it? The public deserves answers, especially in cases where justice appears to be politicized or weaponized for ideological gain. One of the central issues raised this year has been the politicization of tragedies. The killing of innocent children, as referenced in discussions, became a tool for political maneuvering rather than a moment of unified mourning and accountability. Leaders, instead of addressing the root causes and systemic failures that led to such incidents, are accused of exploiting the pain and anger of the nation to further divisive narratives. This act not only undermines trust in leadership, but also trivializes the grief of victims and their families. The spotlight on Sadiq Khan, London's mayor, underscores the complexities of leading a global city amidst mounting challenges. Khan has faced criticism for his handling of crime rates, the controversial ultra-low emission zone, ULEZ's expansion, and perceived cultural favoritism. While his supporters hail him as a progressive leader championing inclusivity and environmental sustainability, his detractors argue that his policies disproportionately impact working-class citizens and failed to address the city's most pressing issues effectively. Among the accusations, Khan's alleged reverse racism and focus on identity politics have sparked heated debates. His emphasis on diversifying the Metropolitan Police, for instance, has been framed by critics as prioritizing quotas over merit. Additionally, his stance on historical statues and monuments, particularly those linked to Britain's colonial past, has been divisive. Some see his efforts as a necessary reckoning with history, while others view them as an unwarranted erasure of the nation's heritage. Criticism also extends to Khan's management of public funds and infrastructure projects. The delayed and over-budget completion of the Elizabeth Line, coupled with repeated increases in council tax, has raised questions about his fiscal responsibility. These perceived failures, juxtaposed with his vocal support for progressive causes, paint a portrait of a leader who, in the eyes of his critics, prioritizes symbolism over substance. Moving beyond the Mayor of London, another figure of contention is broadcaster James O'Brien. His approach to political commentary, characterized by sharp criticism of opposing views and a perceived moral superiority, has earned him both ardent supporters and fierce critics. O'Brien's detractors argue that his rhetoric fuels division by dismissing dissenting opinions and promoting a one-sided narrative. The broader media landscape has also come under scrutiny, with outlets like LBC accused of losing their plurality and becoming overly partisan. This shift in media dynamics highlights a growing concern about the erosion of balanced discourse and the rise of echo chambers that reinforce existing biases. The overarching theme of the year, however, revolves around trust, or the lack thereof, in institutions and leaders. The judiciary, law enforcement, and political class have all been accused of failing to uphold the principles of justice and accountability. Cases involving political prisoners such as Peter Lynch, who tragically ended his life while in custody, serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of systemic failures. Lynch's case, along with others, raises critical questions about the fairness of the criminal justice system and the role of political interference in shaping outcomes. Amid these controversies, the issue of illegal migration has remained a flashpoint in public discourse. The Southport killings, a deeply tragic event, have been cited as an example of the perceived failure to address the challenges posed by unchecked migration. Critics argue that the government's response has been inadequate, focusing more on silencing dissent than on implementing meaningful solutions.